The city of Charlotte, North Carolina, now home to one of the most horrific crimes ever caught on camera. 23-year-old Irina Zarutska, seen here, had no idea that when she boarded a commuter train on her way home from her shift at a local pizza restaurant, that it would be the last thing that she would ever do. That is because DeCarlos Brown Jr., a repeat offender, allegedly took her life by stabbing her in the neck with a knife. Now, the city is facing pressing questions over safety and their response to this crime. Charlotte City Council member Edwin B. Peacock III joins me now. Council member, thank you so much for doing just that. Just first want to get your reaction to this horrific crime that has taken place in your city.
We're 18 days from the murder of Ms. Zarutska. Our city is just blown away by what we've seen. Obviously, this is not something that we normally see in the 14th largest city of the United States, and certainly on a light rail system that we're extremely proud of. It's the largest one to be put in place. Opened up in 2007, first one between Atlanta and Washington, D.C. Your listeners may not know, but most of our light rail system is above the ground. We don't have any underground subways here. So again, it's shocking and appalling what we've seen.
Well, this suspect had 14 prior arrests, and he was out on no bail pending trial at the time of this murder. So obviously the glaring question here, council member, is why was he allowed out into this community to commit this crime in the first place? And that is a question that's not only coming from me, it's also coming from DeCarlos Brown Jr.'s own mother, who said he is schizophrenic and aggressive. She says the court should have never let her son out in the community, knowing he had mental health issues and previous arrests. Is this system of cashless bail something that you would like to see changed?
Absolutely. This is a poster child example of someone who's clearly a harm to themselves and harm to others. Our police are doing an excellent job in arresting these types of individuals, but we have a court system that's overwhelmed. We have a North Carolina system that is de-institutionalized individuals that really should have hospitalization and permanent around-the-clock care. I hope this wakes up a conversation not just around the mental health topic, which has certainly been talked about a lot, but we have to actually follow that with actions. And as sad as this tragedy is, I hope that it will shine a bright light on it.
Magistrate Judge Teresa Stokes is the one who let the suspect out on no bail pending trial. And apparently there was a written note that he would appear in court, and that is what allowed him to be released. What do you think about that? And should she face consequences as a result of this decision?
Each one of these cases, from my understanding, and I also had some personal experience trying to get what's called an involuntary commitment of an individual that I was close with who was having similar type issues. It's all based off each individual case. And in the case of Mr. Brown, our understanding was that it was on a very minor infraction that they were trying to obviously get him and seek more help. So each one is situation by situation. No judge anywhere is going to ever think that they're going to release somebody like this. It's going to do this type of heinous crime on it. But again, it just points to the fact that you see a history. In his case, 12 arrests as an adult under CMPD, our police department. How do we stop this? There's clearly other individuals just like him. I traveled on the light rail system myself just 7 days after she was killed. And there's just many individuals traveling on our trains that have no business being there.
Yeah, a minor, and you know, council member, a minor infraction at the time of his release, but he had 13 other sentences where he was actually sentenced to jail time. So I think one of the things that could happen is looking at the criminal history as a whole. And I also want to ask you about the mayor of Charlotte. Her initial response was that the suspect suffered a crisis, as if he was the one who suffered and as if this was an isolated incident. There's also a local reporter, council member, who posted some tweets about during a session where you were discussing this case and violence in your city, members took a birthday cake break and ate birthday cake. And one of the tweets said, "Cake time is over. Charlotte City Council is now starting its discussion of the fatal stabbing." Do you think the city council is taking this seriously enough?
I know my colleagues and I agree that this is absolutely the last thing that we would ever want to see happen in our city. But are they taking it more seriously? They certainly are now. When the video was released, there's been a deluge on everybody's inbox, and clearly for good reason. I'm asking for my council members to respond by simply supporting the mayor's initiative to put more cops on our trains, and then secondly, to enforce the fares. most of your listeners wouldn't know that on the system that we have that's above ground, it's an open platform system. So there's really largely not a lot of enforcement as to who's actually getting on the train. And it's not been something that we've been following through on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
So the message is to most riders is that this is a free ride, and it's not. And if you don't pay, you won't ride.
And finally, Council Member, President Trump has made crime crackdown a priority. Would you like to see National Guard troops in your city if it means that something like this wouldn't happen again?
Not at this time.
Why not?
Well, simply because crime actually in Charlotte statistically is down like it is around most of the country. But we do have a crime problem, and it's been growing. This is this paper-thin statistic that most CMPD is holding on to. And I just know, having been in this position before, that it's not something that you can take for granted. If someone doesn't feel safe in our city, statistics aren't going to help a victim like this. You have to be serious about what you can actually do about this type of crime. You've pointed it out clearly through the court system where there's been a failure there, but also to help enforce the actual laws that are on the books.
Well, there's a 44% decrease in violent crime in Washington, D.C. after the federal surge. So hearing that statistic doesn't change your mind?
Well, again, each city's going to be in a different situation, but I think that Charlotte would not welcome the actual National Guard, and I don't know where actually you would put them. We're going to already have a response from our police department in response to this immediately, and that was brought out by our mayor last night. Well,
a young woman who was seeking safety from the war in Ukraine came to the United States looking for a peaceful life, and look what happened to her. She's no longer with us, but hopefully some change will be made so this doesn't happen again. Charlotte City Council member Edwin B. Peacock III, thank you for joining us.
Serious stuff now. The brutal murder of a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee on a Charlotte Metro train is now under investigation by the FBI. We learn more about the suspect's lengthy criminal history.
Alexandra Hall joins us outside the White House with the latest. Good morning, Alexandra.
Well, good morning to you. Yeah, there is a lot to learn on this criminal history. And the suspect had previously walked free on cashless bail. That was based on a written promise he made to improve his behavior. Also, his own mother had pled to have him behind bars just due to his ongoing troubles, his issues, and the threats that he had made. DeCarlos Brown Jr. had been in and out of courts and jails for a decade when police say he murdered 23-year-old Irina Zertuska. She was killed exactly 3 years since she moved to the U.S. from Ukraine to escape the war. Now, Brown's earliest offenses including speeding, threats to injury to property, and those were all dismissed. Now, in 2014, Brown pleaded guilty to 2 counts of felony larceny, breaking and entering. He received probation for that. 4 months later, in 2015, he pleaded guilty to robbery with a dangerous weapon. Since he was out in probation, he was sent to prison, but he was released 6 months early. He spent 5 years in prison. In 2022, Brown was arrested for assaulting a woman and injuring property. In 2024, he was arrested for misusing 911, and again for the same thing last year. Then in January, another misuse of 911, that charge. He was released by a judge the same day. Then on the 28th, the judge requested a mental capacity evaluation to proceed with January charges. But it was then on August 22nd that he boards a light rail train in Charlotte. 4.5 minutes after a young woman sits in front of him, he viciously stabs her, according to police. Now, President Trump, he has long blamed cashless bail for situations like this. Here's him responding to this case.
There are evil people, and we have to confront that. I just give my love and hope to the family of the young woman who was stabbed this morning or last night in Charlotte by a madman, a lunatic, just got up and started. It's right on the tape. We're going to get to the end of it. And, you know, when you have horrible killings, you have to take horrible actions.
And Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says his agency has also launched an investigation.
I can't pull money today from their transit system. I actually have to do an investigation. That's what the law requires. We start that investigation tomorrow, and I guarantee all your viewers that if I find what I think I'm going to find, they are not going to have your federal tax dollars going to their public transportation system. Zero, none, nada.
FBI Director Kash Patel said even though this case has been slow to gain attention in the mainstream, he says his agency has been on it since day one. Guys.
All right. Thanks so much, Alex. But the mayor hasn't been, the governor hasn't been, senators haven't been. In Charlotte, North Carolina, this happens on a train. You'd think it would resonate with everyone, but they said we don't want to give the killer any fame, and we want to be sensitive to the family's needs. Really? You don't think the family would like to know who killed him, and would this be able to be stopped again? And since when does a high-profile crime not get publicity because you're concerned about the family? How about the people on that train, and how about this woman who has no idea she's about to die?
And then there's a local reporter named Joe Bruno who put this on social media about what the suspect's mother said about her own son. She says when Brown was released from prison, Brown's mom said he started saying weird things. She says she got Brown evaluated, but his behavior became aggressive. So she got an involuntary commitment order from the courts. He was placed under psychiatric monitoring for 2 weeks and diagnosed with schizophrenia. But after he was released, she says Brown became so aggressive she had to kick him out. He became homeless. Brown's mom says the court should have never let her son out in the community knowing he had mental health issues and previous arrests.
The more and more we learn about this case, the more frustrated I get with the criminal justice system. I'm sorry, the mom did the right thing. She got him evaluated. She did the tough work and said that he needs to be committed. And then the courts decide to allow this guy out. And then you see the long list of rap sheets. She didn't try to cover for his behavior. She admits it. She feels horrible for what happened here. She should be added to the victim list as well as the other families that are now grieving for this, because she did everything that she was supposed to do. But if the mother realized that he was crazy, why didn't the criminal justice system realize he was crazy?
So get this, his lawyer also said, and the mother said, that he is a danger to society,
Yes.
his own lawyer. So why would the judge let him out with a written commitment to come back again? And I look at what the mayor says. We can't arrest our way out of a lunatic randomly killing people on trains. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Well, keep them out, keep the lunatics off the trains. Can you try that? We can never arrest ourselves out of crime. Yes, you can. And if you could take a dent out of it and be logical about it.
If you read the affidavits, he told officers wrote that he believed, the suspect believed, that there was man-made materials inside his body controlling his eating, walking, and talking. And he wanted officers to investigate his man-made material that was inside his body. The Democratic North Carolina governor is calling for more police, but the police arrested him 14 times. So didn't police do their job? Should it be up to the judges to be held accountable? Charlotte Mecklenburg FOP, which is a nonprofit representing, it's the union representing the police officers, they wrote on Facebook, maybe if the mayor followed our Facebook page for maybe the past 5 years or so, should see what we've been complaining about this and calling for action. It's been met with crickets. When we are glad the media is not letting this story go. If it's uncomfortable to read, good. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. This poor young girl was killed because of failures in the system designed to protect her. It never should have happened. While we've been calling for change for years now, our leaders finally care.
And let me just put it this way. There's a crazed maniac like this, where you see all these mugshots in every single major city.
More than one.
In your community. More, you're exactly right. And there are DAs that are protecting these people. There are judges that are protecting these people. And it could be you or your family member sitting on a train, and if you try to defend yourself, they'll make you the problem. That's why we're talking about
in
this
Chicago,
story.
they just let 3 TTA members out, just out of the court. They said, okay, you can go out. We know you're a known gang member. They don't belong here, but you're allowed out. Just as a quick note, there was two GoFundMe pages started
Can you believe that?
for this guy.
Yep.
And the GoFundMe says we're not allowed to do this for criminals. So obviously, but who would ever start a GoFundMe page? There also was a little bit of hope in Texas, in Missouri, in Louisiana and Mississippi. Republican governors taking actions in blue cities because the mayors won't. They're sending state troops down into these cities. So the president's doing it from up top. You got a problem with that? Well, in Louisiana and other places, they're taking action while they're waiting. I mean, Maryland's so desperate not to have the president there, they're doing it themselves. And now Governor Newsom says he's doing it.
You got to vote. I know you got to move on, but you got to vote in local elections. You can't just vote every November when it comes to the president. Most of these policies or your local DAs, your local city council, your mayor's race, all of that, the education of your schools, your local school board. If you're not involved with this, then maniacs like this get away.
That's why the appointment of these judges is so important as well. But you hear about crazy policies that are happening in some of these cities. It's cash bail, no cash bail. So the criminals are back out on the street. You think who's responsible for this? Well, these blue states are allowing this. You have sanctuary cities.
President Trump is speaking out on the murder of a Ukrainian refugee in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was a man out on cashless bail, and he is seen stabbing her in the neck. Here's what the president said.
There are evil people, and we have to confront that. I just give my love and hope to the family of the young woman who was stabbed this morning or last night in Charlotte by a madman, a lunatic. Just got up and started. It's right on the tape. Not really watchable because it's so horrible, but just viciously stabbed. She's just sitting there. So they're evil people. We have to be able to handle that. If we don't handle that, we don't have a country.
So in this case, that suspect had more than a dozen prior arrests. He also served a 5-year jail stint for armed robbery. All this raising the obvious questions. Why was he roaming the streets? Why was he on that train to begin with?
And Alexandria Hoff is at the White House. Good morning, Alex.
Well, good morning to you. You know, the immediate answer to that question is because the judge allowed him to write a written promise that he would show up for his next court date. Of course, that did not happen. But there is still a larger question of why in all of this, because in the last decade, DeCarlos Brown Jr. had clearly spiraled into psychiatric and criminal chaos. Even his own mother told local outlets that she felt that he should have never been out in the streets. But after he was released from involuntary commitment, she had no obvious secondary system that would have prevented him from boarding that Charlotte light rail on August 22nd, where he then brutally and randomly took the life of 23-year-old Irina Zaruska. She was dressed in her work uniform, as you can see. She had arrived in the U.S. from Ukraine 3 years ago for a safer life. Here's more from President Trump yesterday.
We're going to get to the end of it. And, you know, when you have horrible killings, you have to take horrible actions.
Well, Brown's criminal history was lengthy and disordered. His earliest offenses were dismissed. There was probation that had been violated, a jail sentence cut short by 6 months. In January, another arrest. He was then released on the same day. On July 28th, the judge requested a mental capacity evaluation to proceed with those January charges. Now, despite the story not picking up in the mainstream immediately, FBI Director Kash Patel writes the FBI has been investigating the Charlotte train murder from day one. And Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says his agencies also launched investigation.
I can't pull money today from their transit system. I actually have to do an investigation. That's what the law requires. We start that investigation tomorrow, and I guarantee all your viewers that if I find what I think I'm going to find, they are not going to have your federal tax dollars going to their public transportation system. Zero, none, nada.
Now, the mother of Brown, he told WSOC, a local station, that her son had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and really she had no recourse for when his behavior became aggressive. There was nowhere for him to go, guys.
All right, Alex, thank you.
So the city of Charlotte, incidentally, holds its mayoral primary today. Now, the incumbent mayor is Vi Lyle. She issued a statement announcing more security on the light rail trains, and she also called out the courts for releasing the suspect after repeated arrests. However, that's a sharp turn from her previous statement, which blamed the stabbing on a mental health crisis. She did not mention anything about criminal history in her initial response. So now the city's Fraternal Order of Police gave this blistering response. Here's their statement. We've been complaining about this and calling for action. It's been met with crickets. We are glad the media is not letting this story go. If it's uncomfortable to read, good. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. This poor young girl was killed because of failures in a system designed to protect her, end quote. Now, the mayor, Lyles, faces 4 primary challengers in that vote today in Charlotte.
And some on the city council calling out the systematic failures that enabled this crime. And here's council member Edwin Peacock earlier.
We have a court system that's overwhelmed. We have a North Carolina system that is deinstitutionalized individuals that really should have hospitalization and permanent around-the-clock care. I hope this wakes up a conversation not just around the mental health topic, which has certainly been talked about a lot, but we have to actually follow that with actions. And as sad as this tragedy is, I hope that it will shine a bright light on it.
And the city council released a statement saying, quote, "We spent several hours discussing the security measures that have been taken to enhance transit and community safety, not only in response to this horrific tragedy, but also over the past year. Safety has been a key focus area of the council and will continue to be."
So I want to bring in Andy McCarthy and get the legal analysis on this. Andy, good morning to you. I want to mention a statement from a Republican Congressman Fine. He says, "I'm going to introduce legislation to hold judges accountable when violent repeat offenders they release commit new crimes. It's easy to release criminals when you're protected by an armed bailiff at all times. The rest of us aren't so lucky. Those 12 judges that released DeCarlos Brown Jr. should have their day in court, too." He said 12 plus there. Is this a state case or a federal case?
It's a state case, Bill, which is why I think you heard the Transportation Secretary, Sean Casey, talk about pulling money. If they actually had a statute, I appreciate what Kash Patel said about how the Bureau has been investigating from the start. It's a good thing for the Bureau to do, to lend its investigative resources to state investigations. But if they had a good federal crime here, like a murder that happened on a transit system that was in interstate commerce, as opposed to this one, which is wholly in North Carolina, they'd obviously bring the federal charge.
I want to just show you DeCarlos Brown's record under North Carolina Attorney General Stein. 2021, he was on parole. 2022 was arrested, assault on a female, and injury to property. 2024, arrested twice for misusing 911. And there's just I think the graphic of all of his mugshots is very powerful. There was also this passed in North Carolina, a task force for racial equity in criminal justice. This is on a statewide level to address racial inequities, propose reforms, increase accountability in police and in courts. And they had these 4 working groups. This was launched after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor's deaths amid national protests. And one of the things I think is interesting about this is that the mom also blamed the system for not keeping her son in jail. And there's no recourse for her.
Yeah, Dana, this is a problem 50 years in the making. But, 2 things you can say about it. First is progressives have made it very difficult, and this is a problem across the country, to maintain people who have obvious mental problems and who are a threat to society in custody. But, the second thing I'd point out, I'm always constrained to do this, unfortunately, is that these politicians didn't spontaneously appear. They were elected by, the people who live in the cities that are plagued by the dysfunction that we see on the streets, which is tragic and crazy to me, but it's a fact. These policies are put in by people who are elected by the people in these cities.
Well, that's in Charlotte. We're going to talk about Chicago in a moment because the Trump administration is going to make a move there starting real soon, hours really. But in California, the Supreme Court gave the green light for the Trump administration to continue removing criminal illegals from Los Angeles. You wrote on this just yesterday. Here's your headline: an immigration raids case. Supreme strike a blow for common sense. The way I read it, it's a temporary victory. Why is it common sense, Andy?
Well, it's common sense, Bill. As a federal prosecutor for a long time, I did mafia cases and, jihadist terrorism cases. If I had arrested in those cases a bunch of guys who looked like me and were named McCarthy, people would sense that there was something not quite right about that. And, that's because it's common sense that in some instances, you're allowed to take ethnic and language proficiency and other type of those characteristics into account. Nobody gets arrested, prosecuted, or moved against in the system solely on the basis of immutable characteristics. They have to be coupled with articulable facts that a person has actually committed a crime, or it's reasonable to suspect that. But that's all the Supreme Court said yesterday. You're allowed to take these things into account to develop the totality of the circumstances to suspect someone.
All right, Andy, we'll continue to focus on. Yeah, it does make sense. What's interesting is how many different cases are up in the air right now, and trying to get these things to land so that President Trump can move forward. Or if the answer from the court is a no, readjust, because in the meantime, we have people who are, like afraid to get on the subway system or the light rail, wherever they are. And it's not just New York and it's not just Charlotte. Talking Denver, we have Chicago, LA, of course, San Francisco. We could go on. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
So Free Press column boils down the issues around this killing. An excerpt here. There are many angles to this story. The media blackout, the mayor's response with more sympathy for the killer than the person who was killed. He was well known to law enforcement, having been arrested at least 14 times. The obvious question, the Free Press writes, why was he walking free? The answer is simple. We don't like to incarcerate our maniacs until they kill. Mental institutions have been deemed too terrible an option. So in America, every lunatic gets one free murder. Irina Zarutska was DeCarlos Brown Jr.'s one free murder, end of quote. That is a lot to say. Let's get first reaction now from Paul Morrow, retired NYPD inspector, attorney, and Fox News contributor. Boy, that hits every angle of this.
Yeah, it really does, and it shows you how many cascading failures there were. And there's a nuance here, as we heard in Jackie Heinrich's reporting. One of his recent arrests was for abuse of the 911 system after the police went there to do a welfare check. Now, the police don't make that arrest 99 times out of 100. I can guarantee you the only reason the cops made that arrest was they went to do a welfare check and they saw that he was acting out, that he was having some kind of a psychotic episode. They only did that to take him, to get him into the system. That was an attempt by them to say, you know what, this is a guy that we can't leave out here. I can guarantee you that's what happened. So when they go there, they take him, they get him in, and what happens? The same revolving door. And then you have the mayor saying, we need more of a safety net. You're the mayor. Isn't that your job?
Well, if she doesn't know that, somebody should replace her rather immediately, because the citizens in her city are expressing to Fox News, and I'm certain others, that they are living in fear right now. The randomness of this and the people living among us who obviously would need help but can still kill. They want accountability now, and they want to be made to feel safe. So she's got a big job. If she can't do it, she can step down, I guess. Look, I wanted to show you this yesterday, and now we have the video clipped and ready to go. It shows the suspect walking around the train after having stabbed young Irina. And the reason I wanted you to see it, look at the floor. That's her DNA.
Yeah.
He is walking her DNA around the train. He's taking bloody evidence everywhere he goes. Now, you see the guy in the beige shorts, and he kind of, he brushed up against either his leg or his foot. I mean, I think by the grace of God, we're looking at a situation, Paul, and you've been around a lot of suspects, that could have been worse. I mean, he is something else.
He makes eye contact after doing what he just did with another person, probably a woman. That's always the dirty little secret of this thing. Remember, Jordan Neely was going for a woman and her baby when Daniel Penny jumped up and interfered. Very often it's women, especially on these common carrier situations. And to expand the story beyond the mayor just in Charlotte, we're about to get a mayor here in New York City that not only cottons on to all of this, is firmly in place for all of this kind of an approach, but is saying that we're going to have the buses and the trains to be free. You know what happens when the buses and trains are free? People who are mentally ill live on them because there's obviously no way to keep them off. Everybody can go on. So if you think the New York City subway system is a rolling psych ward now, wait until we get Mamdani, which it looks like we're going to, unfortunately. It should be Sliwa, but there's no way that they'll come to common sense in this town to put in somebody who will actually enforce. And so as a result, expect a lot more stories that are not that dissimilar from this one.
Well, and look, you were NYPD, you were leadership. I don't care how much you try to navigate around or predict what one of these people will do. Can you do it?
Look, you can't lock up everybody, I get that, but all the studies in all of history relative to people with severe psychiatric problems demonstrates that you're doing them a favor by putting them someplace carceral. That's a word the left loves. They don't love it, however, when it comes to anybody who's looking to hurt other people, if nothing else.
Oh, wow.
If nothing else, it'll just to keep the rest of us safe. Put them someplace safe, 3 hots in a cot, someplace green, nice and bucolic, that calms them down. They're hearing voices that are saying, attack Harris Faulkner. That's what we can't countenance anymore. But unfortunately, that seems to be the line that the left just won't cross.
Well, it appears that liberal analyst Brian Stelter thinks we should just shrug off the brutal and random murder of Irina. He called out those who are speaking out on the killing. And it seems to suggest, from what he's saying, that it's just a local story that does not deserve national attention?
This one's garnered attention for a couple of reasons. Number one, first and foremost, the recent release of that gruesome video. Second, the energy from pro-Trump activists. They picked up on this video from local news and ran with it. Some of the comments around this story are baldly racist, stoking fear of African Americans because this man attacked a white woman.
Your reaction?
Well, you knew that that's what they were going to seize upon, right? So this is, once again, part of the war on noticing. We're not supposed to notice that this happened. And I'll give you another vector on this. The story's a couple of years old right now, but San Francisco won't broadcast, they won't release crime scene videos of this sort for the same reason. In other words, if we ignore it, it's just going to go away. Philadelphia has a separate prosecutor for their transit system. The transit systems are the lifebloods of these cities. And you know what? One of the reasons that New York City looks as lousy as it does with all these storefronts boarded up, et cetera, is because women are afraid to take the subway, especially late at night. When I was growing up here, women worked till 1, 2, 4 in the morning, getting out of the clubs, the bars, et cetera. They won't do it anymore because they can't get on the subway at 3 in the morning. They're terrified, and they can't afford an Uber. So what happens? Everything in New York City now closes at 10 o'clock. We are no longer the city that doesn't sleep, and it's because of exactly this.
All right, let's get to this. The suspect in the second assassination attempt on President Trump is in federal court right now. It's day 2 of jury selection in the trial of Ryan Ruth, and prosecutors say he was trying to kill President Trump on a Florida golf course last September. Police arrested Ruth after Secret Service agents say they spotted him hiding with a rifle in the bushes. They say he had been camped out there for 12 hours. Ruth, who's representing himself. So this part of it has made pretty big news, because what's that going to be like? He started jury selection with a bizarre line of questioning for prospective jurors. He was asking potential jurors about their views on Gaza, Greenland, and what would they do if they saw a turtle in the middle of the road? The judge dismissed those questions as politically charged and said they were unnecessary for jury selection. So this is now a sideshow. What does this mean, though, for justice?
Well, I think he's taking it as a fait accompli that they have him. I mean, they found him with this stuff. Apparently, he made some incriminating statements. What he's doing is he wants a show trial.
But if he shows that he's incompetent enough or you know, mentally incapable of really having defended himself, the judge has said she has a court-appointed team standing by. Don't you just trigger that to avoid him winning on appeal, or what do you think?
I mean, that's a fine line, because he does have the right to represent himself, but he has, that's pro se they call it, but he has a court-appointed lawyer next to him to help him procedurally and to try to keep him coloring within the lines. Understand that Ruth himself has not made any kind of an application to say, you know what, I'm not guilty by reason of insanity.
That's true.
So it's going to be tried. The thing I think that's interesting about this case, and I want to be clear, I've never bought into any of the conspiracy theories about the attempt on Donald Trump's life in Butler. That kid Crooks, my estimation, acted alone. This guy, there's a lot of red flags. I'm not alleging a conspiracy, but I'd like to have some answers on how a guy that was found and reported to our 3-letter agencies in theater in a conflict zone, Ukraine, who was mixed up with the Afghans, he's trying to get them to fight in Ukraine, how it is that he came back into the country. He wasn't scraped hard at the border. Nobody kept an eye on him. He's got like dozens of phones. He's mixed up with all sorts of stuff. Now, maybe they did keep an eye. You can't babysit him forever. But I'd like to know why more wasn't triggered when he came back into the country, because you and I know, Harris, during the Biden administration, if he had been coming from Hungary, and the allegation was that he was mixed up with white supremacists or neo-Nazis or something over there, they would have been all over him. And I don't get the impression that that is what happened.
I picked up that term. Ruth wasn't scraped hard at the border. You're right. I mean, the Biden administration wasn't scraping anybody hard unless they fit the narratives that they were putting together. Always great conversation with you. Thank you very much for your expertise.
This is Carpino live in Atlanta. Hi, Madison.
Hi, Martha. This is really just a terrifying story for millions of American commuters. So the suspect is now facing that federal charge on top of the state murder charge. But the suspect's own mother told reporters that she did not believe her son should be out in the community, citing some serious mental health problems. We're talking about career criminal 34-year-old DeCarlos Brown, and he has a lengthy rap sheet that goes back more than a decade. His past convictions include breaking and entering, robbery with a dangerous weapon, and most recently, he was released on cashless bail for misusing the 911 system, despite being arrested more than a dozen times before.
Mecklenburg County, which is where Charlotte is, was in the forefront of bail reform, which leads to more cashless bail, which is the last thing that he was out on. There were very clear indications that he was dangerous. His mother tried to have him involuntarily committed. There are many parts here where, like, this guy, it was very clear, should not have been in the streets.
And this all coming to light as the surveillance video of the August murder is going viral. You can see 23-year-old Irina Zarutska walking onto the train after work, still in uniform. She sits down in front of Brown, who's wearing that red hoodie. And Zarutska is just looking at her phone when Brown eventually pulls out a knife and stabs her to death. So people who live in Charlotte are really on edge.
A story like that. I mean, it's concerning just because that's something you don't really expect to happen around here.
Brown is currently being held without bond, and he is set to appear in court again in 10 days. But again, just minutes from now, expecting to hear from the DOJ. Martha.
Yeah, we will bring that live to everyone. Madison, thank you very much.
Today, I would like to address the tragedy that has not received nearly enough media attention, the brutal murder of Irina Zarutska. Here are the facts that many outlets have shamefully and intentionally failed to report until President Trump drew attention to it. On August 22nd, Irina Zarutska was stabbed to death on the rail system in Charlotte, North Carolina, by a savage career criminal. This is a public transportation system that many in the area use every single day to go to school and work. Irina was on the train that night traveling home from her job at a pizzeria, still in uniform from her shift. This beautiful, innocent 23-year-old young woman was a Ukrainian refugee who had recently fled her country for a chance at a safer life and a promising new beginning here in the United States of America. But tragically, a public transportation system in a major American city was more dangerous than the active war zone that she left. The president and the entire White House are praying for her family and friends during this unimaginably difficult time. But while we extend our thoughts and prayers, we must also seek justice for this crime and call attention to this heinous incident. Surveillance video of the killing was finally released to the public this past Friday. It shows the alleged killer, DeCarlos Brown Jr., pull out a knife, get up from his seat behind Irina, and prepare to thrust a blade into her neck before the released footage gets cut. This is pure evil on full display. The most enraging and unacceptable part of this story is that her death was entirely preventable. DeCarlos Brown never should have been on that train that night. In fact, he should have been behind bars. DeCarlos Brown has been charged with crimes no fewer than 14 times, dating back to 2011, including for armed robbery, felony larceny, breaking and entering, and shoplifting. Brown had previously served 5 years in prison for a robbery with a deadly weapon charge, and he had also forfeited bonds 3 different times, twice in 2014 and once in 2023. Despite all of this past documented criminal history, when Brown was arrested yet again in January of this past year, a Democrat judge, who I will add was a strong supporter of former Vice President Kamala Harris, released this insane criminal once again without requiring him to pay any bail. He simply had to sign a written promise to return for his court hearing. Think about how crazy it is to ask a career criminal, someone who by definition repeatedly breaks the law, to just sign a written promise and come back again another day. This is madness. This monster should have been locked up, and Irina should still be alive. But Democrat politicians, liberal judges, and weak prosecutors would rather virtue signal than lock up criminals and protect their communities. And perhaps most shamefully of all, the majority of the media, many outlets in this room, decided that her murder was not worth reporting on originally because it does not fit a preferred narrative. Many of the journalists in this room spilled plenty of ink trying to smear Daniel Penny for defending a subway car from a deranged lunatic in New York City, but none of those same reporters lift a finger to write stories about an actual murderer. Here's the truth that every American must know. Too many innocent people across the country continue to pay the price of the failed experiment known as cashless bail that has been championed by the Democrat Party for years. All the way back in 2020, North Carolina's then Democrat Governor Roy Cooper established a so-called task force for racial equity in criminal justice. Sounds nice, but it's not. That task force was co-authored by then Attorney General and current Democrat Governor Josh Stein. It recommended, quote, reimagining public safety to, quote, promote diversion and other alternatives to arrest. It also advised to de-emphasize some felony crimes, prioritize, quote, restorative justice, and eliminate cash bail. Democrats in North Carolina and nationwide are consumed with pushing a woke, soft-on-crime agenda, no matter how many innocent Americans suffer as a result. Instead of aggressively prosecuting and locking up violent criminals, the Democrat-backed cashless bail approach lets these criminals roam free in our country to offend again and again. These reckless policies have turned too many of American cities into hunting grounds for career criminals who mock our justice system, drain law enforcement resources, and wreak havoc on law-abiding citizens. Enough is enough, and that is why President Trump is doing everything in his power by taking action to undo these absurd policies. The president recently signed a powerful executive order directing the AG to submit a list of states and local jurisdictions with cashless bail policies, so that the Trump administration may identify federal funds that are being provided to these states and can potentially be suspended or terminated. President Trump firmly believes that to maintain order in public safety, we must incarcerate individuals whose pending criminal charges or criminal history demonstrate a clear, ongoing risk to civil society. This is a common sense and sensible approach that the vast majority of Americans agree with, and it's time for the Democrat Party to get on board with what is right. When these criminals are caught, they must be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law and be sent to prison, where they can no longer terrorize our streets. This is the mandate the American people delivered to President Trump, and it's a mandate he intends to fulfill. Staying on the topic of public safety, new preliminary data released today by Customs and Border Protection in August shows that President Trump has delivered the most secure border in American history. For the fourth straight month, 0 illegal aliens were released into the United States by CBP. Nationwide encounters are down 93%, below the peak of the Biden administration. Border Patrol apprehensions on the southwest border in the entire month of August were less than what was apprehended in 4 days in August 2024 under the Biden administration. President Trump has ended disastrous Biden illegal alien invasion, and he sealed our border in record time, keeping this central promise he made to the American public.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Waters, along with Kayleigh McEnany, Jessica Tarlov, Dana Perino, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. The Trump administration is bringing federal charges against the monster who slaughtered Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarutska and seeking the death penalty. This as we get horrific new video of the aftermath. And viewer warning, it's tough to watch. You can see the look of pure terror on Irina's face after the attack. She's cowering in fear and covering her face. No one steps in to help. And moments later, she collapses to the floor while her killer walks away, dripping in blood. But the liberal media isn't outraged by this heinous crime. They're outraged that you care. Politico says Ukrainian refugee killed in North Carolina gets dragged into political messaging war. Axios has the headline, Grisly Charlotte stabbing video fuels MAGA's crime message. And CNN says Republicans are pouncing.
Horrific new video of a Ukrainian refugee's murder caught on camera. It is absolutely horrific. Trump is now seizing on this to push his nationwide crackdown.
But President Trump showing no mercy to the killer.
She was slaughtered by a deranged monster who was roaming free after 14 prior arrests. We cannot allow a depraved criminal element of violent repeat offenders to continue spreading destruction and death throughout our country. We have to respond with force and strength. We have to be vicious just like they are. It's the only thing they understand.
All right, so pretty astounding the way the media is characterizing this, Greg.
Well, I mean, there was a time, and I know it was hard to believe, when murder wasn't a political issue, when we were kind of all against it, no matter what side you were on, we just kind of felt murder was bad. But then the left put that through the ideological meat grinder, where suddenly crime became a response to oppression, an act by the oppressed. And that meant the victim was a lesser problem in the left's hierarchy of problems. And so what you saw was the Dems became kind of known for being soft on crime, but the media stepped in to twist that narrative into a form of suicidal empathy. It's like you're supposed to care until it hurts. That meant that if you crossed the street to avoid a gang, that was your fault, not the gangs. You were a racist if you looked out for your own self-preservation. So it's the crime to the media. It isn't murder. It's that you notice the murder. And they will say, and you ask why, and they will say, well, obviously it's to score political points. That's what you're doing. So you have to think about that. Why is it scoring political points? Aren't you just saying that you're revealing your own guilt, that anytime somebody voices outrage, you're in danger of being exposed for your ambivalence towards crime and your pro-crime policies? Like if that wasn't an issue, you wouldn't care if people express their outrage because it wouldn't affect you. But you're going, oh my God, the spotlight is now on us. Now we have to defend all the terrible things we've done. And just a point that is very obvious, it's not like we cherry pick crimes. When you're a right-winger, you've been talking about crime your entire life, right, sometimes to a fault. Remember, we are genetically predisposed to self-defense. We talk about crime all the time. This is our wheelhouse. We just expect you to come out and be on our side when the most obvious, horrible things happen. It's kind of funny. If you express rage over blacks getting killed in Chicago, that's racist. If you express outrage over whites getting killed in Charlotte, that's also racist. So what does that tell you? Could it be that just expressing outrage over murder in general is the problem because you're exposing the Democrats and the media's ambivalence about protecting innocent people from the criminals that you empathize more with?
And you know, yesterday, Dana, we were discussing this and we had only seen the frozen image. And now you see the aftermath and it's really tough.
So the video circulating online of the actual stabbing is genuinely horrifying for what is done to her, but also because it's even more chilling to see that nobody moved.
Yeah.
Nobody tried to help her. And so if conservatives are pouncing on this issue, is that good? Could conservatives pouncing save lives in the future? I mean, maybe, is that what it's going to take? We're going to have to pounce.
Yeah,
Fine.
Nobody pounced there.
No, I'll pounce, okay? Nobody else is pouncing. It's especially wild when you consider the Ukrainian angle. I've been supportive of Ukrainian refugees from the start. So is most of the media, so is most of the left. Until now? Why now? Why all of a sudden is this a conservative talking point? You even have the suspect's mother asking for something to have been done, that the system failed her because she didn't know. She wants him put away. I think one of the most chilling things, as you saw the graphics today that we were using on Fox, if you have the 14 mugshots all up on one thing, and then the mayor says you can't arrest yourself out of this problem. That's like saying you can't diet your way out of losing weight. You can, and if it's really hard, throw in a GLP-1 and maybe you can get some more help. So that's what you could do here with these prosecutors. Gavin Newsom tried to take some of the fire off of his state and other blue states by saying, look, there's crime in red states too. Well, okay, ding dong. The point is that the mayors of the cities, the attorneys general, the U.S., not the U.S. attorneys, but maybe under Biden, but the state prosecutors, the city prosecutors, that's what we have here in New York. It's definitely what they have in D.C. But Judge Jeanine Pirro is having to deal with the fact that not only did a lot of lawyers leave the office just out of protest because they don't want to fight crime or something, you have the D.C. attorney, Brian Schwab, responsible for a lot of this revolving door policy. And so I am happy to pounce if it's going to help save some lives in the future.
You know, we know that Democrats were very behind these Ukrainian refugees, Jessica. We heard a lot about how we need to take them in, and we also hear a lot about how we need to protect women from the Democratic Party. Why don't you think you've heard more from Democrat politicians on this heinous crime?
I mean, this crime, which took place on August 22nd. We didn't have video footage until a couple days ago. Listening to the U.S. attorney there, it took a while to even bring the charges because federal charges, they said it could actually take up to months, and this was a fast tracking of it. So this only kind of swooped into the national consciousness a few days ago. I am not saying that it was picked up with the same, veracity or verve as, for instance, what happened on the New York City subway with Jordan Neely and Daniel Penny et al. But I do think that the runway hasn't been as long for people to be paying attention. You have now obviously heard from all of the Democratic officials, certainly across North Carolina, and a few that have been asked on camera. But this seems like a really good opportunity to get behind the U.S. attorney there who is bringing these federal charges and to make a serious point about this guy and the direct link between a revolving door of people who are imprisoned over and over again. And then on top of it, and I'll repeat my point from yesterday, Dana already mentioned his mother had wanted him involuntarily committed. He had beaten up his own sister. That you're going to have a lot of people who would typically not be enthusiastic about a policy of involuntary commitment getting behind it, because there is this anxiety that you could sit down on any form of public transport. You could be sitting in a park having lunch with a friend, and there is someone completely out of their mind. Odds are that they've been through our system, that comes up behind you and sits next to you. Yep. The fact that nobody budged is unimaginable to me. And even if I understand it, it wasn't it didn't look like the movies once we finally saw it, but I'm sure she was making noise and she's holding the side of her face, and you see the woman who's sitting directly across from her turn her head towards her and then just turn it back. And we have become so programmed to just be in our phones, listening to whatever it is, or not wanting to deal with the fact that we are all living together on this planet, that I don't know if something could have been different for her. But that woman, for all intents and purposes, on top of what happened to her, had to die alone. Which
I do see acceptance. Like when you
like
look at the people,
happens.
they just accept that this stuff now happens and better just stay away. It's everybody. It's not just that. It's like in muggings or anything. People just, what
but
this
you
is
would
the
think
world.
Differently of Charlotte, North Carolina.
When Dan Penny, went and did it, he got arrested.
Yes. Yeah, right.
Exactly. Well,
yeah. We've heard sympathy from the left and from you, Jessica, and I know that's heartfelt and it's great, but, sympathy is important, but also we need accountability. And I think we need to ask ourselves, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? And to me, there's pretty simple answers. You mentioned the crazy person roaming around that commits random violence. Well, that crazy person usually has priors. And this crazy person had 14 priors. We went through the 14 mugshots. Dana mentioned them. Well, also behind those 14 mugshots is a story behind the 14th one, the magistrate judge. The magistrate judge who he went before for his final arrest let him out on cashless bail on a written promise. So this deranged individual gets out on a written promise on cashless bail and then goes on to murder a woman in her pizzeria outfit at 9:45 p.m. on the L train. Well, how do we fix that? Number one, you mentioned Democrats in North Carolina. Well, they sign on with the Republicans from North Carolina who want to remove this magistrate judge. Every single Republican has signed this congressional letter. Will the Democratic congressmen and women do that? What about Randy Fine? He's putting forward broad legislation to remove judges nationwide who do this kind of behavior. We need accountability. We need judges. And I hope your side of the aisle will partner with the Republicans, sign the letter. Let's get this lady out of here.
We'll
you want me to
happens.
sign? You always look at me like I'm
right here. You can sign for.
Being addressed, so I turned my head, but I'm sure you'd sign it, Jessica. We just don't know about your colleagues in North Carolina.
My colleagues. I don't work for the party.
Ahead, Big John Fetterman calls out the morons in his party who are drinking the socialist Kool-Aid.
Yes, Sandra, good to be with you for another hour. Caroline Leavitt went on to say that cashless bail is a, quote, failed experiment. And then we all heard it. She took the media to task, essentially saying they refused to cover the story because it didn't fit their, quote, preferred narrative, and said the media had a whole lot of ink to spill when it came to Daniel Penny and his arrest on that New York City subway. So she felt this case was not in the national spotlight enough. But Sandra, now I understand we're hearing from the president himself with some new reaction to all of this.
She often, during her remarks, pointed to this new statement from President Trump. He posted it to his X account. It's in chunks. It airs in total 2 minutes and 18 seconds. We're going to play it out in its entirety. Listen.
For far too long, Americans have been forced to put up with Democrat-run cities that set loose savage, bloodthirsty criminals to prey on innocent people. Really very, very innocent people. In every place, they control radical left judges, politicians, and activists, and they've adopted a policy of catch and release for thugs and killers. In Charlotte, North Carolina, we saw the results of these policies when a 23-year-old woman who came here from Ukraine met her bloody end on a public train. And here's a picture of it. This is the picture of it. And this is a picture of the woman, a beautiful young girl that never had problems in life, with a magnificent future in this country. And now she's dead. She was slaughtered by a deranged monster who was roaming free after 14 prior arrests. We cannot allow a depraved criminal element of violent repeat offenders to continue spreading destruction and death throughout our country. We have to respond with force and strength. We have to be vicious just like they are. It's the only thing they understand. 24 of the top 25 most dangerous cities in America are run by Democrat mayors. 50 people were murdered in Chicago in recent weeks, with hundreds being shot. And it's time to stop this madness. The people of our country need to insist on protection, safety, law, and order. We have proven that it can be done because we did it right here in D.C., in District of Columbia. The capital of America was a bloodthirsty, horrible, dangerous place, one of the worst. And now it's a crime-free city, and we're going to keep it that way. It can be done. It can happen fast. All we want is, please, Mr. President, we need help. Chicago needs help. Other cities need help. We'll do what has to be done because we're going to make America safe again, and that includes our big cities. We're going to make those cities safe. Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.